Let's get that Mr. Nightmare video up, honestly. I actually feel good tonight. I don't, my left nostril's not fucked up tonight. I swear to God, I'm like allergic to the toothpaste that I use. I gotta try a different one because every single time I use that toothpaste and brush my teeth before I sit down, my left nostril fucks up and it gets clogged and my nose runs like crazy. It's all clear, like discharge or whatever, but it's fucking annoying. All right. All right, give me just a sec. I'll be right back.
There was a brief period of time that I lived alone. When I freshly moved out of my parents' house and before I met
Oh,
my
wow.
girlfriend,
Look at that animation, though.
and then she moved in. I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment in the downstairs of someone else's house. I spent a lot of time alone during this period of my life, besides when I was at school or work, and so I spent a lot of my time watching movies. Specifically, I liked watching scary movies pretty often. Even as an at-the-time 21-year-old guy, I still would be a little spooked trying to sleep after watching a scary movie, especially living alone in that apartment, and every time I did, I would look around the room. At a few points, I would even turn the bedside lamp on just to check around the room. The tenant upstairs wasn't home that night, as his car wasn't in the driveway, so the sounds I was hearing couldn't have been footsteps upstairs or anything like that. My nerves were really starting to set in at one point because I just kept hearing noises, and to be honest, I couldn't tell from where in the house they were coming from. I got up to head over to the door of the bedroom and opened it. Outside of my bedroom was a very narrow hallway, which had a door to the bathroom, and then at the end of the hallway opened up to the living room. At the end of this hallway, though, like a scene right out of the movie I had watched not even an hour earlier, there was someone standing at the far end of the hallway right by the kitchen. The moonlight from outside coming into the bedroom windows and the windows in the living room was enough to see her, this woman looking right back at me. She started to walk backwards while still facing me. I didn't care though. I still screamed and backed into my room before slamming the door shut and locking it. She didn't come running over and pounding on the door or anything like that. Instead, I heard running up the half flight of stairs to the exit of my apartment, and then the door slammed shut. I was frozen in shock for at least 10 minutes before I felt okay to take my phone and leave the bedroom to check the apartment. It didn't take long. It was a small apartment with not many hiding places. It was empty. I rushed to lock the door, wondering who that could have been and how they got in. I didn't call the police. I couldn't tell you why. But the next day, I called the landlord and told him about it. He made a phone call to the upstairs tenant, and what I learned shocked me. The woman that broke into my apartment was an ex-lover of the man who lived upstairs, a crazy one at that, and after finding his address somehow, she broke into the wrong part of the house, my apartment. The upstairs tenant came down to my door and apologized to me that following day, but I never got much detail from him or the landlord. I still wonder what that woman was planning on doing to him.
Hey, what's up,
I'm not
Vern?
a fan of
Sorry,
my
I was up
dad's
for a
girlfriend
second.
at all. Not from the start. Her name is Kathy. My dad has been widowed since 2019 when our mom died. And I know he's gotten lonely and he's pretty much ready to settle with anybody now. Even Kathy. And against my warnings, he doesn't listen. I've been seeing her do some
I got a
sketchy
fresh
things
cut,
around
man.
the house, and it's really starting to freak me out.
Hair's really
now.
short under the hat, so
I'll
I'm not
start
going to
from
take it
the
off.
beginning. I have two siblings. My 10-year-old brother Jake,
What are
and
you
my
into?
2-year-old brother Scotty. From the day he introduced her to us, I didn't like something about
Nightmare
her smile.
fuel, that's what we're here for.
It was just unsettlingly wide and exaggerated. Pretty soon he'd start bringing her around a lot more, and I just never loved her, honestly. But at first it was only because I felt something was off about her personality. Then things started happening. She's been staying with us for a while now, and a few weeks ago, I caught her in my dad's closet while he wasn't home. My dad's safe is in his closet, along with where he hides the combination and some other valuables. When she saw me at the doorway, she smiled and said, "Hey, what's up, sweetie," to me, with her annoying, creepy smile. I didn't say anything other than nothing. Then she shut his closet door, and I walked away to my room. I told my dad about it, but he didn't seem concerned. A few days after that, while my dad was at work again, I just got back from school, and I was walking upstairs to my room. And as I saw Kathy leave my little brother
Your audio is sussy and wide.
Jake's room and shut the door behind her. I asked her what she was doing in his room. She smiled and said, "I was just opening the window, it's hot in the house." I didn't answer and walked up to my room. When I heard her go downstairs eventually, I snuck to Jake's room to check if she actually had opened the window, and both windows were shut. Something was up with this lady, and I knew it, and I still know it. I told my dad again, and in response, he asked me to just please be patient with the situation, and that he knows I don't care for Kathy. I didn't bother telling Jake. Fast forward to 2 days ago. Jake, my dad,
Oh
and
my
I
God,
were all
that
not
emotes
home,
guy
and
is
Kathy
awesome.
was babysitting Scotty. I came home unannounced, but I wanted to be secretive about it because I wanted to see if I could catch her doing anything again. I snuck into the house and went to my room quietly. Eventually, from the kitchen downstairs, I started to hear Scotty crying. Not regular crying, like a very distressed kind of crying. And I heard Kathy screaming at the top of her lungs to shut the F up. It was the first time I heard her raise
She
her
did not
voice,
drop the
and I
F-bomb.
believe it was the first time I was hearing her true colors come out. I ran downstairs to yell at her to leave my brother alone. She was startled and shocked that I was home, and for the first time, she didn't give me her creepy smile. She looked at me blankly and went downstairs and shut the door. I called my dad and told him right away, and that night, my dad had a conversation with her about it. I don't know how it went, but I assume not good, because that night, I woke up in the middle of the night to something, and looked up into my room. There was someone in my room, and they quickly left the room and shut the door behind them. I got out of bed and opened my door, and as I got into the hall, I saw and heard my dad's bedroom door close. I went over to my dad's room and opened the door, and both Kathy and my dad were laying in the bed. I woke my dad up furiously and told him Kathy was just in my room. She denied the whole thing, saying she was in bed. I don't know if my dad believed me or not, but he told me to go back to my room and he'd talk with Kathy. I obeyed, and I heard them whispering as I shut the door. I went back to bed, and I was scared. I'm still scared. I want her out of the house and out of our lives. I think she's dangerous. Why was she in my room? It's freaking me out. I worry for my family's well-being, and I don't know what we can do.
Oh, I was gonna say, please don't end the story there. Holy shit, that's dark.
This one goes back a few years ago to when I was 30 years old. I was at my condo in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My condo, which I still own, is on the second floor of a decently nice building that I won't name for privacy reasons. Whenever I go down there, it's in the colder months up north, and I'm a complete beach bum when I go down there. Luckily for me, I work remotely from my job through my laptop and phone, so I've been able to retreat down there whenever I'd like. Fort Lauderdale is for the most part a pretty clean and safe city, and the specific location my building is in is no exception. That is, usually. It was the middle of January. It was late at night, past 10 o'clock. I was out on my balcony with my feet over the railing, on my laptop, when all of a sudden I heard from down below on the ground someone yelling something. They were yelling, "Yo," and "Hey you." At first I didn't move, taking the assumption that whoever it was talking to someone else. They couldn't possibly be calling up to me. But they followed with, "Hey you up there." And my heart skipped a beat, because now I knew they were talking to me. And my main question was, why? I set my laptop down on the chair and looked over the railing down to the ground below. There was a guy in front of a car in the parking lot, looking up at me.
That sounds
said, "Yeah,
amazing,
you."
Dr. Red. Steak soup, garlic bread, and mashed potatoes.
I asked, "What's up?" He told me to come down there so he could show me something cool. I took a better look at this guy. Some guy with a backwards hat and tank top on. I assumed he was just some punky kid messing with me, so I ignored him and sat back down. When I did that, I heard him laughing as he said, "I'm gonna come up there and skin you alive, you prick." I stood up again and looked at him. He had this unsettling and sinister smile on his
Meth head,
face.
maybe?
I realized he looked older than I initially thought. He wasn't some kid. I literally opened my mouth to shout something back at him, but for some reason, I didn't bother. I grabbed my laptop and went inside and shut the sliding door. I expected him to yell up a couple things afterwards, but I didn't hear him do so. As uncomfortable as that made me, I felt much safer being inside. I chalked it up to just the occasional coked-up Florida lunatic on the streets. But things became next level when the silence of the room was broken by pounding on my condo door, accompanied with a voice yelling obscenities and
Definitely
threats
a
at me.
meth head.
It was the guy again. The bangs were so loud I was genuinely concerned he was going to break the door down. All I could do was yell, "I'm calling the police." That didn't faze him. His bangs turned to these carving and stabbing noises. It probably all lasted for about a minute or two, but felt like a century until he gave one more loud angry bang, screamed one more obscenity at me, then left. I knew because I checked through the peephole. I called the police after the ordeal just to show them and report it to them. On the other side of the door, there were several stab marks in it, confirming I did hear him stabbing at it and confirming this man had a knife. I pray nobody was harmed that night. I doubt he knew me. I think he was just a really drugged out crazy person looking to hurt someone.
See, I used to work at Walmart, and I definitely dealt with some meth heads late into the night. You know what I'm saying? This video is just a bit too long. I don't want to, I don't want to bore anybody to tears. The video is cool, but I don't want to, don't need to watch it for the next 28 minutes. Creepy emails with disturbing backstories. Let's watch this one. This guy has the best narration voice.
Spam folder in your email. There's a chance at one point you received an email with one of your passwords in the title, and inside the email would be threats of leaking your information or worse unless you paid a certain ransom, usually in Bitcoin. This usually happens when a hacker or even often a regular user will likely find this info by merely searching any
I know, but
data breach
it's very unprofessional for me to be saying it.
Forums.
Here.
In March of 2019, a 25-year-old man named Joe Albanese received a similar email to what was just described. It was titled his password that he used for every account that he had. This was obviously a cause for alarm, so he opened it immediately to read the contents of the email. This is what it said. Hey Joe, all you really need to know is that I know your password and other personal information. I won't come after you, I won't harm you, as long as you send me a small amount of money, $5,000 in the form of Bitcoin. We're going to refer to it as a donation for a good cause, not as any kind of blackmail. My Bitcoin address is... If you don't send me the money, bad things may happen. Don't even bother going to the police. This email is untraceable. Joe did some research and learned that these kinds of threatening emails are common scams, and usually nothing will come of them. Still, Joe replied to the email asking, what other personal information of mine do you currently possess? I'd love to know. He sent this as a sort of challenge to the email, not even really expecting a response or for it to even go through. But it did. He promptly received a response back saying, I know your home address is If you go to the police, I will know about it and you will be sorry. This is when worry would really set in.
Okay. So I wanted to tell you about this other thing we were watching the other day. One of my viewers, Freaksticks, brought this up to me. There's this channel called Lang Marine. Okay. This guy, he exposed the Fresno Police Department for stalking people and trying to fill their arrest quota by getting people's filling their arrest quota by taking down people's license plates and basically chasing them down for minor infractions. And he exposed that, and then they started basically casing his property, and eventually they started sending people to break into his house. They were staging, they staged a person on a motorcycle around his place specifically so they could pretend that the guy broke through his front gate, and that way the cops could come in and investigate his house. And they were driving by his house at 3 and 4 a.m. to wake him up with loud sirens and then turning them off right after. And guess what? This guy actually ended up dying. And the cause of death is quote-unquote stabbing himself in the back in his own kitchen. Because we all know that happens by accident all the time. This was his last video. Which is of his security system. Just remember, this man's life could have been saved had someone bothered to listen to and realize what these people were doing. The last video he made was his security system catching this guy just standing outside of his house, looking around and acting suspicious, and this carpet cleaning company doesn't even exist, so this is a completely fake... it's basically a disguise. But this carpet and upholstery cleaning bullshit, it's just a cover-up. It doesn't even exist. So this guy's most likely a hitman. And here's what he said in the description. If I turn up missing or dead tomorrow, remember this van. I think I've seen a couple of guys sneak out the side door and into the building when it was parked in the carport this afternoon. I've been causing the city of Fresno a lot of problems recently, which I now regret. Sign on the door and guarantee carpet cleaning, Fresno. Or sign on the door said, guarantee carpet cleaning. But yeah. Basically, he released the story anonymously about them chasing people down and doing illegal stuff, and someone who worked at his yeah, exactly. And someone who worked at the news organization called the what was it, the Fresno Bee, they released his IP address information because the police asked for it specifically so they could do this stuff. So they could harass him, and there was even a guy who was conditioning his dog so that it wouldn't bark if someone broke in. So he caught the same guy walking past his house like 4 or 5 times and petting his dog and getting his dog used to that one so that if they broke in, the dog wouldn't freak out because it would recognize them. Fresno LE conditioning my dogs and neighbors' dogs at 11:30 p.m. And also there is one video of them using a thermal camera pointed at his house to find out if he's home or not. And then there's a guy in the front who's relaying it to probably somebody that works for the police department. And there's just some guy sitting here with a massive thermal imaging camera so they can see if he's home. This is the same Fresno, California sheriff crew that has been illegally entering my property and home when I leave my house. Here they are using an infrared thermal imager to see if I am home. Then they phone a waiting second party with information as to whether or not I am home. Fresno PD fails to fully investigate my complaint on this incident, which I fully detailed in the internal affairs complaint. If anyone can identify any of them, please forward their names. Yeah, here's where he said, I am being targeted by multiple City of Fresno departments and the sheriff's office for comments I made on the Fresno Bee from 2009 to 2013. Comments that were critical of the Fresno PD and the way they used their budgets. My discus handle during that time was John21. Posters on the Fresno Bee using the discus comment system were supposed to be anonymous. However, Fresno Bee employee Jody Murray shared Fresno Bee log data and IP address information with a sheriff sergeant who then used that information to retrieve name and address info in order to maliciously track down, stalk, and harass Fresno Bee comment posters, including myself. Yeah, and of course, in typical, shit justice fashion, nobody really knew what happened to this guy until after he died and they found his YouTube channel sitting here. Look at all these views. 500,000 on this one right here. Thermal imaging threat, 500,000 views. 130,000, 608,000 views. So a lot of people sure know about it now, but when he was desperate and asking people for help, nobody was watching or helping. And that's the biggest tragedy there. But let's continue with this video.
Anyone, as having a password leaked in a data breach is one thing, but some unknown person having your home address threatening you with it is completely next level. Joe didn't reply to the email for several days, but he also didn't go to the police. He decided to wait it out and see what would happen next, and after 3 days, there was a follow-up email saying, I'm still waiting for the payment. I won't wait much longer. Joe replied this time saying, I'm not paying you $5,000. If you want to come to my house, you'll get a face full of lead.
Oh,
This
damn.
was a complete bluff though, as he doesn't actually own a gun, and the hacker likely knew that, because that same night, Joe received a follow-up email containing a picture of his house.
Oh my
His
god.
parents' house, and zoomed in on his bedroom window upstairs. He didn't want to tell his parents in fear of worrying them, but now that his gun bluff didn't work, he knew he may have to get them or the police involved. He responded one more time saying, I don't have $5,000. I'm broke paying off student loans. The house you sent a picture of is my parents' house. They did nothing wrong. If you need to do this, please do it to someone else. I don't have the money to send you even if I wanted to. There was no response this time, but within an hour, the sound of glass shattering from downstairs traveled throughout the house. And everyone, including his parents, heard it. There was one of their decorative bricks from the front of the house, laying in the dining room among thousands of tiny shards of glass from the broken window. Joe tried to explain the situation as quickly as he could, and while he and his dad took a quick look outside for anyone who could be out there, his mother called the police. Joe showed the police officers the emails and everything, which were forwarded to the police department. A police officer stayed parked outside the Albanese house for a couple hours that night. Joe blocked the email address from sending any further emails, and as far as he knew, he was never contacted again. The police had a hard time tracing back the original source of the email, as it was sent from an untraceable
Oh, you
device.
mean with the Fresno PD situation or this one right here? the Fresno PD situation, apparently it did end with a bunch of people being fired, but that was really it. Like, they found that there really was corruption going on, and they ended up firing the chief of police and a bunch of other people on staff. I think in total it was about 23 people. But they never, of course, they never saw jail time or anything. They just got fired. Which means they probably just went and got another job, and it was all fine and dandy. So.
An iPod Touch or similar device. At some point, everyone imagines being famous in their lives. A lot of people create this image in their head that being in the public eye creates for nothing but a fairy tale life. But that's far from the truth. Being under the spotlight in any capacity comes with a lot of drawbacks, one of which being stalkers and overly obsessed fans. One extreme case
yeah, I mean, people assume that the police department hired that guy as a hitman, the cleaning guy, because guarantee carpet cleaning doesn't exist and never has. So that van was just a cover-up so he could sit there and, you know, collect info about the house. But there's no way. We'll never know for sure. And yeah, that's true, Jordan. And also, you're not supposed to have, hey, what's up, Meg? You're not supposed to have a policeman who was involved directly with the case present at the autopsy because that's a conflict of interest. But John Lang actually had 2 autopsies, which both had a police officer present. So they most likely tampered with and manipulated the results of both to make sure that there was absolutely no suspicion cast on the police department. So isn't that just fucking lovely? Isn't that just lovely? But yep, some creepy stories for you, Meg.
An ex-radio host and DJ who was centered in Los Angeles had a long, seemingly never-ending chain of emails from an obsessed fan. It started around 2005 or 2006.
Oh my god, let me grab some more coffee. By the way, you guys, Pass 5665 is my mom. She has joined us here tonight. Let me get some more coffee, and I got to tell you about this crazy story of a lady who posted asking for legal advice on a CPS agent who was trying to get her baby before she even gave birth to it, who turned out to be completely fake and was actually trying to steal her newborn.
Started noticing a regular listener, someone who listened to the show every day and would call in on the request line from time to time. At one point, the listener won a prize from the show, and in order to deliver the prize, the DJ requested her email, and that's where things began. In order to be polite and cordial with the girl, he would answer all of her emails, and when Facebook started to become popular, he added her back where she commonly liked and commented on his posts. This went on for a while, until one day the fan professed her love for him. The DJ rejected this advance in the most...
You guys have to hear this. I'm gonna turn the noise gate off for a second so you can hear him. He is going nuts right now. Hey, what are you doing? You guys can hear the fan now. Come here, buddy. Oh, he just climbed in the tub. See, when I put it at 30, it fixes everything, but if I go to 0, you can hear the fan running in the background and everything. Alright, I'm gonna turn it off and see if you can hear him now. He's walking around behind me. What are you doing, buddy? You're being very vocal tonight. How come? What's the reason? You're purring very loudly too. You hear us purring? That's your good boy. You a good boy. I just want to hear. He's gonna meow any second. Well, he made a liar out of me. Anyways.
Most polite way he could. She seemingly accepted the rejection, and the DJ thought it would be the end of it. But it wasn't. In 2011...
Hey, it's my mic. Look, it's my mic. Because that's what everybody cares about right now. Anyways.
She emailed him a link to a blog that she was writing, where she would post about him and their quote-unquote love multiple times per day. She followed him over to a new radio station and was religiously listening to his shows, assigning meaning to the musical playlist. For example, the song Marry Me by Train was popular at the time, and whenever that song would play on his show, she would blog about it actually being a marriage proposal from the DJ. She began saving all his photos from his social media and photos of other women in his life, like friends and girlfriends, and posting them to her blog with extremely hateful words. She'd make posts raging about him being a man whore, followed by another post not even 10 minutes later in a completely different tone, apologetic and soft, implying she may have bipolar tendencies. The DJ did his best to ignore it, even though by this point he was extremely creeped out, but as she again began emailing him, he tried more forcefully this time to get her to stop, but she wouldn't stop. The DJ started sending DMCA requests to her blog host from the photos of his that she had posted. The repeated violations got her blog shut down, but then she started emailing him instead of posting blogs. He made a filter folder so he never would have to see them aside from occasionally peeking at the insanity in the folder from time to time, just out of curiosity. Years went by and he hadn't answered any of her emails after 2 of them when he very adamantly told her to stop all communications and leave him alone. This continued for years, and in total she has sent him over 4,000 emails, all of which he's archived.
This is just like the lady who sent 10,000 texts to the one guy. Yeah, 65,000 texts after one date. This lady. It's just like this lady. Look at her crazy eyes, man.
How did you wind up here? I wound up here on a road trip from Florida. Looking for, I guess, love.
Holy shit.
This is a picture of just a select few of them. The more recent emails had gotten very dark and violent in tone.
What? Chicken shit. Shove it where the sun don't shine. Or according to in Mandy's vagina. What?
In one of the most recent ones, she was threatening to find and hurt the DJ and happily go to jail for it. In another one, she listed the specific neighborhood in which he lived, which he worries she may have his address if she already knew what town he lives in. In an effort to stem the flow of information, he deleted all of his social media accounts a while back, but she would still email him pictures he appeared in from his friends who had public profiles, as well as radio station photos that he appeared in. Most disturbingly, she sent the DJ photos of a shrine she had made of him in her home.
Oh my god, actual Helga. Actual Helga in real life. Only this is no cartoon.
Photos of a shrine she had made of him in her home, with framed photos of his social media that she had posted up on the walls, desks, etc. Being a DJ, his appearance schedule must remain public, so she could technically find him working at nightclubs anytime she wants to, and understandably he's freaked out and worried about his safety. After calling multiple attorneys, none seemed very interested in helping him with this matter. Due to his fear of facing the girl in real life or even being in the same room as her, he never went through with filing a restraining order. He also worried that on the off chance she didn't have his home address, the legal process would reveal it to her. To my knowledge, there was never any follow-up with this, and it's not known if the harassment continued or what route the DJ pursued, if any. But this is one of those extreme cases of how a fan's obsession could have a very negative effect on someone's well-being and mental health.
I would not have the patience to do that.
This last one, a viewer who wanted to be referred to as Christian received multiple emails that he wanted me to share in a story video. Christian has a friend named Katie who was out for a job interview. They used to be co-workers, which is how they met. Nothing was out of the ordinary until Christian started to try and contact Katie after her interview was supposed to be done, only to find that his texts weren't delivering and calls were going straight to voicemail. It was very possible that her phone could have been off or she had no cell service, but as hours passed and still nothing was delivering, he started to get concerned. The most likely and obvious possibility was that she lost or broke her phone, but finally, hours later, the text said delivered. However, Kate never replied. That same day, as Christian was checking his email, he saw an email from Katie's old work email. He opened it, and it read, "Hey, I lost my phone and keys. Can you come pick me up? By some old warehouse construction looking building in the parking lot across from a Hyatt place."
Highly suspect.
Christian asked when she last had her phone and if she had any idea how she lost it. She replied, "I have no idea. Just come soon, please. It's cold." The address that she then sent to better help Christian get to her said it was 20 minutes away. but looking at the location of the address on the map, it led to some abandoned-looking warehouse parking lot, evident by the green growing in the parking lot and decaying-looking rooftop. Christian sent another email back, demanding she go to a less sketchy pickup point. She took a few minutes to answer back with, "I'm already sitting on a bench here. I'm comfortable, just please hurry."
Oh god, that's so
Christian got
suspicious.
in his car and started following the directions to the location he was told to go. But about halfway there, he stopped the car when he had a thought. And that was, how is she using her laptop to email him in the middle of some random parking lot by an abandoned warehouse? While it was maybe possible that there was some free Optimum Wi-Fi nearby or something, it did seem very unlikely. This is where Christian became suspicious of the whole thing, and the fact that she was using her laptop to contact him instead of going to the hotel across the street and calling him just made it seem more suspicious. He tried calling her number a few times, and now it was ringing instead of going to voicemail. On his third try, the phone rang twice.
Guess
and
what,
someone
guys?
picked up for a second.
We have a visitor.
Most likely on
A
accident.
snicky.
By this point, Christian was
Hi,
suspicious
baby.
all of Katie's things were stolen. He called Katie's brother to tell him about the situation.
I'm a good girl. You go sneaky. She's like, get this clown out of here. Love you. Her face was like,
and ask his opinion. But when he asked first thing, "Have you heard from Katie?" Katie's brother said she had been home for 2 hours, and that her entire backpack and phone were stolen.
yep.
Christian
set up.
yelled into the phone that he was being led into some sketchy parking lot at that very moment by someone who was on Katie's email, most likely on her laptop. Christian drove to Katie's house immediately to pick the two of them up, and they called her phone and left a voicemail with all three of them yelling threats of what they'd do if they didn't return the phone and laptop, which probably went unheard if the thief didn't have her
Resting
passcode.
torty face, yeah.
They also sent a number of texts which went unresponded to. After calling the police and requesting assistance in the parking lot, a police car did show up, but the entire parking lot was abandoned as expected, and no further emails were received. Kate's phone was never turned on again. It was likely disposed of. She never got any of her stuff back, but on the bright side, Christian may have avoided being lured into some kind of trap that would have led to him being robbed or harmed.
Yeah, it's definitely the dark side to being online. The one that got me the most was the Craigslist stories. Oh, my free candy. Okay. This one is fucking awesome. I think we've watched it before, but that's okay.
When I was 17 and looking to buy my first car, I was on Craigslist every single day. I wasn't looking for anything fancy, just a beater car that could get me from point A to point B. My budget was $3,000 at most, so the cars I was looking at were no newer than 03, 04. I found an ad one day for a 2002 two-door Honda Accord. It was listed for $2,000, and the mileage was under 80,000, so right away I knew I wanted to check it out.
Crazy deal.
The person who posted the ad lived a few towns over from us, a 20-minute drive on the highway. I convinced my mom to drive me out there to view the car after conversing with the guy over the phone. Originally, I texted him asking for details, but he ended up calling me. He sounded basically normal
No.
over the phone.
No.
Actually rather...
Listen, I've actually dealt with pseudo real-life stalking. I've dealt with a girl basically sicking a guy on me to try to slash my tires at work. So honestly, streaming is not nearly as scary as that was, and even that wasn't too scary. Like it just is like, I don't know, it's just standard operating procedure for me to sit here. It's just SOP really for me to sit here in front of the camera now, and it's not that weird. But you know, that's why I had to ban a couple people from my Discord though, because they were messaging me some very questionable stuff about A, what they wanted me to do, and B, that they wanted me to shoot some kind of like private videos of doing dumb shit. So no, I banned those people from my Discord because fuck that.
polite. He answered some questions I had about the car and whatnot, and when he asked for my name and I told him Dan, he said, "Dan, what a great name. That's my name too." I laughed because it was the polite thing to do, but I just found it to be such an odd comment. Like everything about it, it almost sounded like he forgot his name was Dan because of the pause between "what a great name" and "that's my name." It just sounded sketchy. Nevertheless, everything else about the call went fine. So the next day, my mom drove me to the address.
Saying what with her here? I've told her about that before, at least I think. I'm very open and honest with my mom. Like, I've told her about some shit that most people probably wouldn't admit. But that's because life is all about failing and learning. Listen, if you combine all of your fuck-ups in like a 2-year period, then you don't make any more of them for quite a while. That's how this works, right?
The guy gave me. Getting off the highway and onto the streets, right away we agreed this was a trashy-looking neighborhood.
What's
Bars
up,
on
Salt?
windows, graffiti under bridges. I was hoping the guy's place wouldn't seem equally sketchy, but as we pulled up, it was. It wasn't a standard property like the rest in the area. The entrance to the property was between 2 houses. It wasn't a driveway, just some low-key road that led into an inlet with 2 more houses. Every house was cramped between other houses and buildings. But there, and a man's voice said, "Come inside, the door's unlocked." I went to open the door, and my mom stopped me and whispered.
Anyways, what I was saying was, I have told my mom pretty much everything there is to tell her about my ex that I refer to as Thing 1. I have 2 main exes that I call Thing 1 and Thing 2. And Thing 1 is the one that I've detailed before about the pregnancy scare and all that nonsense. So, hey, if she knows about that, you know, what the hell else is there? Really?
You sure you want to go in there? I said yeah.
No need to
Let
keep anything a
ourselves in,
secret. Everybody
expecting to
makes
be greeted
mistakes.
by Dan. The inside of this place was kind of dark. Not a lot of natural light came in through the minimal windows. "Hello?" I said. "Yeah, over here," a voice called. It was a deeper voice than I heard on the phone. "Dan?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. I began walking through the little kitchen, closer to his voice. My mom grabbed my shoulder and stopped me. She whispered in my ear, "We're leaving." The man's voice now came from beyond this door at the end of the kitchen. He called up, "Down here, we could do the transaction here."
In the basement, we can do a
Mom and I left the house in
transaction.
a hurry. As we were hurrying to my car,
Dating apps make me anxious. I'm too nervous to reply to people. Yeah, it's fucked up these days because there's so much catfishing going on. There's so much catfishing going on. It's unbelievable. But, I mean, just the idea of trying to form like a somewhat intimate relationship with somebody through a dating app is very daunting. Like, it's hard. It's not something that's easy to make happen. I'm just anxious to reply with someone I've never met. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't want to overshare. You have to think a lot more about how you want to approach something like that. Whereas if you work with somebody and you've met them in real life, it's a lot easier, I think, to open up that door and have that conversation to start out with. But yeah.
a lady at the next building over
This guy wants him to go into his basement to buy a 2002 Honda Accord. Okay, buddy. Nothing weird here.
called to us. She came hurrying down from her front porch, warning us not to go in there. Then she asked why we were there, and we explained that I came to buy a car, but that he was calling us into his basement. The woman said that she's been concerned about that man living next door for months, that she thinks he's up to no good, and that he constantly has random cars pull up in
I
the
cannot fathom why so many people want to do transactions at their homes. This one I can sort of understand because he owns the car, but if the car is in perfect working order, why can't you just drive it to a meeting point, you know? Well, I guess maybe if it's uninsured or not registered or something, but, you know, yeah, broad daylight, public place. I'm not inside your house, that's for sure, and I'm certainly not going in your fucking basement.
in the middle of the night. We asked if his name was Dan. She said she wasn't sure, but that she vaguely remembered the guy introducing himself as Mike. She told us to just get far away from the house immediately, and so we did. It's disturbing to know my mom and I may have been murdered in that basement if we went down there. Like, how could we do a transaction before even viewing the car or agreeing on anything? Better question why in the basement. The whole thing screams trap. I don't know what else he could have wanted to do to us, more specifically me, in that basement. This actually happened to my best friend Chris. His family had just bought a new TV, and they were thinking of just throwing their old one away. Chris's
I think
older
there's
brother
one time
John
I ever bought
suggested to their
anything off
dad-
someone they wanted to meet elsewhere. Yeah. Yeah, always meet face to face. That's like ground rule. But what also blows my mind is the amount of times that people are, as the seller, straight up just give somebody their address. No way would I do that.
Rick that they could sell the old TV on Craigslist to make some easy cash. Since the family
Yep,
never
scam.
used Craigslist,
100%.
John said he could set up the ad for him, since John's girlfriend used Craigslist before. So John put up an image of the TV with the description, used 55-inch Samsung 4K TV for $200. He also put Rick's phone number, so if anyone was interested, they could just call or text him. A week later, Rick got a call from a guy who introduced
It's like I
himself
wish
as
I was
Toby.
that trusting of people and had that good of an experience with people in my past that I could just trust them with my address after having just met them on Craigslist. But I'm sorry, I don't trust people like that, and I never will.
And he said he was interested in the TV and wanted to know if he could come by the house at 10 o'clock that same night to pick it up. Rick said sure, and he sent Toby his address. Later that night, while Rick, Chris, and John waited outside the house for Toby to come so they could help him load the TV into his car, Rick got a call from Toby, and he said he wouldn't be able to make it to the house because he was almost out of gas, so he and Rick agreed to meet in the parking lot of a Circle K. After Rick got off the phone, him, Chris, and John loaded the TV in the back of Rick's pickup truck, and they took off to the Circle K where Toby said he was at, which was 15 miles away from the house. When they got there, they pulled up in a parking space next to the gas pumps, where Toby was filling up his car, a black Nissan Altima. A few minutes later, a tall, heavy-set bald guy with a goatee walked over to Rick's truck and said he was Toby. He told Rick that since the TV was big, it would most likely not be able to fit in his car, so he suggested that they could just follow him back to his house, and Rick agreed with him. After a few minutes of driving on the main highway, they got onto a back road, which looked sketchy because there was nothing but trees on either side of the road and it was filled with potholes. Toby texted Rick and said his house was at the end of the road. When they got to the end, the place that was supposedly Toby's house didn't even look like a house at all. It looked more like a tall, abandoned building. When they got out of the truck, Toby told them to untie the TV from the back so they could start unloading it. After they untied the TV, they turned around and saw 3 large men emerge from the back of the car, and they all pulled out guns.
Oh my god. All this over a fucking TV, by the way. Sold a GPU to some dude and he stopped at my house. Dude rolled up in a yellow 6th gen Civic with a hole in the hood with the valve cover sticking out the top. Painted red. Shit was rice to fuck. Oh my god. Yeah, never go alone. I mean, that's good that they did that here, but apparently there were 3 people waiting to ambush them over a $200 TV.
Untied the TV from the back so they could start unloading it. After they untied the TV, they turned around and saw 3 large men emerge from the back of the car, and they all pulled out guns, including Toby. They threatened to kill them if they didn't give them all they had on them. Rick, Chris, and John didn't hesitate, so they all gave the guys their wallets and phones, and they obviously took the TV too. After taking everything they had, the guys got back in the car and drove away. When Rick, Chris, and John got home, Chris and John told their mom everything that went down, and Rick called the cops and told them the whole story, and even gave them the license plate number from the car since he memorized it. To this day, Chris's family never heard of any arrest being made. That was the one and only time the family ever used Craigslist.
Oh no, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think it does happen more in the States.
Back in 2012, when Craigslist was more popular, I'd say, my house was broken into and robbed. A bunch of things were stolen, like 2 TVs, my Xbox 360, all of my video games, my hockey skates, and whatever stray cash I had laying around. I had the police come investigate the house, but nothing that would help track the perpetrator, including fingerprints, was found. I gave them a list of everything that was stolen, but the cops in my county usually suck, and they didn't help at all. Now I had to replace everything that was stolen. Believe it or not, the most costly thing to replace would be the video game collection. But I was starting with the replacement TVs. I went to Craigslist, and there was an ad that was posted earlier that day for a 40-inch Panasonic TV for a low price. Panasonic was the brand I had.
Jesus Christ. You played Magic the other day. Turns out 2 people got stabbed outside the Walmart in the same parking lot complex. Or, oh, like plaza, you mean? Yeah, that's fucked up.
So I contacted the seller and drove to his house that night. He let me into his disgusting home.
Damn.
It reeked.
Got him.
And the stains in the carpets and general messiness of the place didn't help. He brought me to this back room where the TV was. I examined it, and it was the exact TV that I had in my living room that was stolen. Then I started to look around the room, and I noticed another smaller TV that was tucked in the corner of the room, as well as an Xbox. The smaller TV looked exactly like my other TV that was stolen. I went to pick up the Xbox and check the bottom of it for the specific long scratch in the case that mine had. And there it was. That was my Xbox. That was all of my shit. I looked at the guy, who had a confused look on his face, and I said, "Dude, you're the piece of shit that stole my stuff." His expression changed.
Oh, yikes.
He played dumb and had an angry tone now. He told me to get out of his house and lifted his shirt, exposing his gun holster. I live in Texas, so he likely had a license to carry. I left the house and called the cops. They arrived to the scene, but the man wouldn't let them in. He insisted they get a warrant and claimed that I was harassing him. I told the cops about my police report and the robbery and everything. They said they wouldn't be able to get a search warrant until the next day. I regretted not getting pictures while inside the room, but I wasn't thinking clearly in the moment. I was furious and I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, he just found it out and was seeing red, but that's a huge mistake. Like, you're inside the guy's house. He could have very easily just shot you, and that would have been it. We've been like, nah, this looks kind of ass, bro, and then just called the cops, yeah.
While I was getting ready for bed and doing research about search warrants, lawyers, and different possible outcomes to this situation, I heard a window break downstairs. Immediately, I knew it was him. Following my instincts, I climbed out of my window and down to the small ledge under my window. From there, I jumped to the ground and ran to my neighbor's house. My neighbor let me in while I called the police. They arrived within 10 minutes. I handed the police my spare house key I had hidden on the side of the house, and they investigated the house again, guns drawn this time, and inside they found him, hidden under my bed. If that's not terrifying, I don't know what is.
Hidden under his bed.
When I said earlier that cops usually suck, yeah, this was the one time I actually loved cops here. And yes, it was the man who posted the Craigslist ad. He actually broke into my house to kill me that night, as he had his gun on him, and why else would he be hiding under my bed? That doesn't sit well with me, even to this day. He was found guilty of breaking and entering with intent to commit murder beyond a reasonable doubt, and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Even still, I moved to a new town and changed my number. I tried to strip any possible trail that could lead that man to me when he gets out. And I'm sure he's out by now for alleged good behavior. That's the part that scares me the most. All of this, over less than $1,000 worth of items. It actually makes me sick. I think Craigslist is one of the most dangerous places on the internet you could go.
Yeah, play dumb and just get out. If I remember right, this is by far the scariest story.
I once answered an ad posted on Craigslist for a free mini fridge under the free stuff section. I was setting up what people would call a man cave in my basement, and I needed a mini fridge for under the bar to store beers and other drinks inside. I checked the address on maps, and the house was apparently waterfront, sitting over a tall cliff overlooking a huge lake. The person who was texting me said his name was John, but that he wouldn't be in the house, just his elderly mother. He told me when I got there I'd have to let myself in and go to the far right bedroom from the foyer, as his mom is hard at hearing and she's very slow. I thought for a second, what if instead of me answering this ad, it were a bad person and they totally took advantage of the situation? It sounded almost too easy to rob this old woman's house. Well, I coordinated a time with John to go to his mother's house, around sunset, and I gotta say, as I pulled up to the long dirt path to the property, seeing that big house sitting at the top of the hill with the sun setting in the background over the cliff, it was beautiful. Before going into that house, I admired the view of the lake below for a couple minutes. Then I texted John that I was there. He repeated his instructions to just let myself in and go to the room to the far right, as his mom would be waiting in the bedroom. He reminded me she's very old and I'd have to do all the lifting myself. I said that's fine. I entered the house through the front door, which was left ajar.
Wow, that is beautiful.
Right away I was hit with the smell of cotton. It reminded me of the smell of my grandma's house. I followed his directions and went to the door on the far right, which led me to a narrow hall. The house seemed rather large from first impressions. As I went down this hall, the smell of cotton suddenly shifted to this horrible smell. Literally, it smelled like death, like a rotting animal. I entered the doorway at the end of this hall, and the smell in that room was unbearable. That's because of the dead, rotting corpse on the bed. It was the rotting corpse of an older woman. It looked as though she'd been dead for a week or two. I wanted to throw up. I suddenly heard a loud, maniacal laughing from upstairs, accompanied with stomping in place. It seemed someone was in a room directly on top of me, simply stomping their feet to scare me, and it worked. I ran out of the house to my car, looked at the house one more time,
What's up,
and saw a man at one of the upstairs windows. Then I realized there was another person standing at one of the downstairs windows, both of them wearing face masks, like the same kind of mask you'd wear now for the coronavirus. My phone started blowing up with texts all of a sudden. all of them in capital letters. The first text said ha ha ha, followed by we see you, look at the windows, then a bunch of emojis. The last text I got from him said come back inside, you forgot your fridge. I drove off the property, and while on my way home, I called the police and reported the dead body in the house. After they investigated the house and apparently confiscated the dead body, which had no signs of any stab wounds or bullet holes, police arrived to my house for questioning.
What the fuck?
I showed them the whole conversation and gave them the phone number, which I warned them was probably a fake number, and I was right. But an officer named Boris told me they'd still be able to trace the number even if it was through some kind of fake number app. So, a week later, I was curious about the status of the case. So I called the police station, but the woman who picked up the phone didn't know any information. That or she didn't care enough to look for me, because in general she was just kind of rude. I never read about or saw anything on the news about an arrest being made regarding this, so to this day I don't know if the people in that house were caught, or if they were even responsible for that woman's death.
Yeah, that one was fucked. That is by far the worst one. That was by far the scariest and worst one. I mean, that guy is probably traumatized after that situation. All over a mini fridge. You know, that's what really boggles the mind about these things, that people would go through such lengths to either kidnap or mug people over these trivial items. Or kill people over a 360. You know? Is there some kind of problem here? What's happening? Not at all. That's what I fucking thought. Say some shit again. Disturbing videos taken in attic/roofs. Let's go.
Anyone living in a house, odds are your house.
Oh my
has
god,
an
it got
attic
so
in it.
bright. Holy
Perhaps
shit.
the place in your house you spend the least amount of time in. But do you ever hear sounds coming from up there? Sounds that almost make you wonder if something's up there. Of course, it'll usually be dismissed as house settling noises, because who would ever imagine that someone or something would actually be up in your attic, or God forbid on your roof, right? Well, these videos may make you want to install cameras.
Cameras. I love this guy's accent.
Jerome and Ashley Kennedy, a Pittsburgh couple, along with their 10-month-old baby, were
Look, it's still nightmare fuel. Whether it's a game or whether it's videos, it's still nightmare fuel. Give me a sec.
living comfortably, unbeknownst to what was going on above their heads in their own home. The row house next door that was being renovated was owned by 73-year-old Robert Havrilla, who's described by the couple as very reclusive and known to keep to himself. Jerome was in bed one night when he heard noises above him in the attic, the kinds of noises that weren't just house noises. He knew somebody was up there. Then he noticed a light shining through a pipe, as if it were searching for a place to look through. So Jerome installed a surveillance camera in his attic, and a day later, caught on tape was many people's worst nightmare. His neighbor Robert in his attic, carrying a power drill, looking into the bedroom. His neighbor had made a removable wall to gain access to their attic. It wasn't just the attic though. Jerome also found perfectly round holes in the common wall between the two row houses. The shapes indicate that Robert the neighbor was drilling holes through the wall. Cops were called, and Robert was charged with stalking and trespassing, which he pled not guilty to.
The hell did I just come back to?
That his client had no bad intentions. He claims he was in the attic for maintenance reasons connected to his renovations, not to peep on anyone or do anything malicious. Anybody with half a brain would know this is BS. The many holes drilled in the common wall and through the ceiling in the attic were without a doubt meant to spy on his neighbors. Strangely enough, it appears Robert was aware of the camera that Jerome had placed, as he looks right at it in this frame, so why he continued to do what he did is unknown. This anonymously submitted video to a channel called Handle Bandle starts with a young guy explaining how the dry boxed food that he and his girlfriend had left in the garage was mysteriously torn open and scattered across the floor.
Door open in the front or the back door open, but when we were still moving our food in, we left a lot of our box food here in the garage. And when we came out, I think it was a couple days ago, I think it was a Thursday in the morning, the boxed food, the dry food that we had, was all torn open and scattered across the garage floor. Since then, we sweeped it out and cleaned it up and everything, but something got in here and tore a big hole in the side of some of those boxes. But anyway, with this new camera, hopefully I can catch something on video.
This reeks of
Maybe
fakery.
put it up on YouTube, we'll see.
Obviously, it could have been any number of wild animals. So, in an effort to catch the animal in action the next time it happens, to hopefully help put an end to it, the guy starts to record anytime he hears noises outside. So the following night, the guy and his girlfriend hear some sounds on the roof while watching TV. So he looks out his window with his camera's light on in an effort to see if he can find the source of the sounds.
So we were just laying here watching The Office by the window up here, and we're on the second floor. And I mean,
Well,
we hear noises
a couple of
every now and
Office
then,
watchers. I can see why this happened.
but you can see how high up we are. We hear noises out here, but nothing like what we just heard. So it might be worth looking into. I gotta get a flashlight. Can't see anything. I can't really describe exactly what it sounded like, but almost like some kind of a screech.
When the window doesn't provide a good view of what it could be, he decides to go outside for a better view. And this is what he sees.
Alright, let's see.
Fake.
The fuck is that?
Fake. Oh my god, this is so fake.
What in the fuck? Wait a minute. Hey!
It's half a head of what looks to be either some kind of creature or perhaps somebody wearing a mask. He goes
Fake.
back inside to gain access to the roof through his window to get a closer look. As he climbs
Hey.
up, he hears a snap, then looks to see the head again, still staring at him, causing him to possibly fall off the roof.
This is not even good. There's nothing spicy that happens here. It's just fake.
Where did it go?
No other information is known of this video. Was it some kind of creature? Some people in the comments were saying it could be an owl. Others think it was a person in a mask with malintent, possibly trying to break into the house. And some believe this was footage of a rake.
Yeah, it's fucking fake. It's his friend.
Imagine being home alone at night as a teenager in a big empty house, and imagine that you start hearing noises from up in the attic. That's exactly what happened to 17-year-old Stephen Braun. While playing video games in the living room, Stephen heard thumping sounds from up in the attic. He called his dad, who was at work, and his dad sounded concerned and told him to go upstairs and check on the hot water heater, which is actually in their attic, a very uncommon place to find a water heater.
You can always tell, because his first reaction wasn't let's call the police or anything. It was, what the hell is that? You know, this obvious acting for the camera. Like, get that shit out of here.
Stephen's dad was worried that something was wrong with the water heater and that the sounds he was hearing were coming from it. So Stephen obliged and proceeded to go up into the attic, but not without recording. As Stephen checked the water heater and saw that it was completely fine, he then appeared to be leaving the attic, and that's when he heard a sound that caught his attention. As Stephen heard something come from inside a large,
So the first guy paid his friend to sit on the roof, and this guy paid his friend to sit inside of a shipping box. What the fuck?
long box. He took a closer look at it and saw someone's eye peeking out one of the holes.
This angle almost looks like he could have just pasted a photo of somebody there.
Understandably, the 17-year-old was probably in shock and unable to do anything besides stop recording and run out of the attic. He says he locked himself in his room to call his dad, and his dad simply told him to hang up and call 911, and that's what he did. As Stephen was in his room, He heard the footsteps of someone leaving the attic and then running down the stairs of the house and out the front door. As has clearly happened way too many times before, by the time police showed up, it was way too late to catch the intruder. Oddly enough, nothing was stolen from the attic or the rest of the house, but it's unknown for how long exactly someone was up in the attic, or what they were doing up there. In this video you're about to see, a young couple who just recently moved into their new home started hearing noises from up above in the attic, so the man decides to go up there with a light and camera and check it out.
These are so fake, dude. This video is full of fakes.
The man looks around for several minutes but doesn't see anything.
Every one of these
out of the
people
ordinary.
thinks they're filming Paranormal Activity
As the wife
Part
is clearly
5.
very distressed and scared, the man maintains a calm, reassuring demeanor about the situation. As the man descends back down the ladder, the woman keeps recording and inadvertently catches something disturbing on video.
Did he upload this on April Fool's? Did he really? He didn't. What, dude, this is so fake. This is so fake. They literally had their friend chuck the doll at the camera. Look how it comes into the frame.
Video.
Look, here comes the doll. There it is. See? Oh my god, dude. These are so cringe. I'm sorry. Let me wash my hands really quick. We'll find a better video. We need higher quality videos than this, dude. The sound effects are also way too much. Let's see the last one, though. We've come this far. Let's see what other trash this video has to offer.
What appears to be the wrinkled, gray face of an old man, peering down at the couple for a very brief moment with an eerie expression. It quickly disappears back into the darkness above, going undetected by the couple. Some people believe that it may have been a homeless elderly man who was taking refuge in the couple's attic. However, given the small size of the attic, it would be very unlikely for the man not to have spotted a squatter up there.
Unbelievably fake.
In the early hours of the morning on July 14th, 2011, Josue Silva started hearing noises coming from his roof that he had been hearing the night before as well. This footage is over 10 years old now, and the person who recorded this didn't have much money to afford a better camera, and high-quality cameras weren't as easily available back then. Josue swears that the footage you're about to see is legitimate.
I've been hearing some noises on my roof tonight. Hear that? Hear that? Yesterday I heard the same thing, but I didn't want to come out.
This also has fakery written all over it.
Charged. I can hear something up there. Hear that? Hear that?
What is happening? I can't even tell. It's so disorienting.
Oh my god.
And with the number 15. He swears this footage is legitimate though, guys. You know we have to believe him. It's gonna be a big caped figure.
Carla, these are the shingles. Oh my god.
Fucking sound effects, dude.
After seeing this rake-like creature, Josue falls from the roof from shock. He grabbed his rifle and returned to his roof, but the creature was no longer there. The creature seems to be bald with a large round head, but no facial features can be seen.
That actually looks like a baby doll. 3 photos with really creepy backstories. Well, this is more true crime. Field trip horror stories. Okay, that sounds good. Let's do this one. Oh, that sound. You guys know, though, that sound has such a smell associated with it. You know, like the bus exhaust smell. Oh my god. You guys that rode the bus, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
took a field trip in middle school to a salt marsh in our town. It was for our science class to study marine life or something like that, I don't even remember. All I remember is we were in teams of 2, and our assignment was to take notes of certain things we could see through our binoculars. I was paired with my best friend Jordan. He and I were lagging behind the group because we wanted to sneak off and do our own thing. So when our teacher, Miss Stern, and the 2 other teachers on the trip with us were far enough away, we turned around on the path and went a different way. The whole salt
Diesel,
marsh
yeah,
was just
yeah.
a large maze of wooden walkways built over the swampy waters. The trip was so mind-numbingly boring to us at our young age that we couldn't stand the assignment anymore. We went off to explore down the alternate walkway that we weren't supposed to go down. It had a big sign posted up saying something like, "Don't go down this way unless you work for the town." So guess what we did? Of course we went down this way. There was a lot of super tall grass everywhere, so we were well hidden from the teachers or the rest of the students. We walked for a while, till we passed this little shed-sized building that said "Do not enter" on the door. We tried the door handle, but it was locked, so we proceeded onward. The more we walked and the more turns we made, the more we realized this place was absolutely ginormous and a literal maze.
Uh-oh, they
There
got
came a time
lost.
where we agreed it was time to head back to the group, because we weren't having much more fun ourselves than we would be with the group. Plus, it was getting late and we'd been gone for a while, and we didn't want to get caught. So we started going back in what we thought was the right direction. But after apparently wrong turn after wrong turn, we admitted to each other that we were lost. Any sense of direction now was completely gone, and the sun was clearly starting to go down. Panic didn't set in just yet, but we were definitely worried.
Dude, you know that
Time
feeling?
dragged on.
I know that feeling. When you realize you're lost, especially if you're driving and you realize you're lost, that's that sinking feeling just hits you and you're like, fuck.
And we couldn't find the damn path back to where we came
Heart
from.
rate starts jumping
We
up.
tried finding that little building that we had just passed as a sign that we were going in the right direction, but we couldn't.
Yep, you resist the urge
Tall,
to sprint in
swampy
one
marsh
direction.
grass was taller than us.
This
and
makes me
blocked
want to
sight
watch
of
Blair
everything.
Witch.
The sun was now setting, and there was no way our class and teachers were still here. This was before cell phones were a big thing, let alone among middle schoolers. We had no way of calling for help, but we refrained from screaming until the sun was practically all the way down and panic now started to set in. Suddenly it seemed we weren't alone. Jordan and I started to hear the splashing of water nearby, exactly the sound of someone walking through the probably knee-high water. We started to walk faster down the wooden pathway, and when we stopped again to listen, the splashing was still there, getting louder and closer. We didn't have flashlights, only the moon to light the way. We knew we weren't alone.
Oh, me too. I love them.
Something or someone was in the tall grass, hiding, somehow watching us. Jordan basically had a fuck it moment and went to the grass where the splashing was coming from, pushed a bunch of the giant pieces to the side, and then screamed like a little girl. I didn't see what he saw, but I didn't need to. I ran right behind him down the pathway until we both had to stop to catch our breaths. He saw a person hiding in the grass, though I already figured that before he even told me. We kept running and then stopping to catch our breaths until the sound of a helicopter overhead came closer. We saw it, flying over with a searchlight on. We started waving our hands in the air, and whether that helped or not, I don't know, but eventually the spotlight landed on us and stayed there. We expected the helicopter to lower and pick us up because we were idiot little kids, so when it just hovered there we were confused. But what they were doing was showing where we were to the police search team that came looking for us, after our parents reported to the school that we never came home.
Yeah.
We were eventually found by a bunch of police officers and led back to safety. We told them there was someone hiding in the marsh, stalking us, of course. Apparently Miss Stern either miscounted on the bus back to school, or she simply didn't do a head count at all, and the buses left without us. Either way, she messed up big time, and I'm surprised she wasn't fired. This was easily hands down the scariest night of my life, and it happened when I was so young, too.
That was a good story.
In senior year of high school, we took an end-of-year field trip to Boston for our U.S. history class. Part of our assignment was following the Freedom Trail and viewing historical sites like the Bunker Hill Monument. There were of course some teachers and volunteer chaperones on the trip, but between me and my 2 friends Sean and Matt, we were all 18, so we easily convinced one of the more chill teachers to just let us go off and do our own thing. So we
Never a
straight
good
off into the
idea.
city and just messed around having fun checking out the place. We checked out Boston Harbor, where we got food at some waterfront restaurant. Then we checked out the Quincy Market and some other historical landmarks. And then finally we ended up at this little cemetery called the Granary Burying Ground. This is where the horror to this story began. There were of course a few other people in this little cemetery besides the 3 of us. We weren't exactly that interested in it. We were just walking through it because it was basically one of the major things on the checklist of places that we were supposed to see. Anyway, there was this one guy who caught my attention. He was wearing this old-looking trench coat and a small top hat.
Oh God,
It was
trench
definitely
coat.
too warm out to be wearing a trench coat.
Terrible
I know
idea.
that. He had a gray mustache.
Anytime you see a fully grown person in a trench coat, unless they're shooting some kind of reenactment of the Matrix, run.
Too, but that's about all I really remember of his appearance. The reason I picked up on him was because he was looking right at me, just standing still. He wasn't walking along looking at the gravestones like everyone else. I said to my friends in a slight murmur, "Why is this guy looking at me?" as I walked past them, making sure they followed me out of there. As we got back to the street, I told them more loudly that I was being eyed down by some weird-looking old dude. Neither of them took notice, but I didn't want to go back to point the guy out, so we kept walking. We were supposed to meet everyone on the trip at the Quincy Market at 5, so we started making our way back there. A few minutes into our walk, I turned around for whatever reason to look behind me, and there he was again. That old man in the top hat not too far behind me. I noticed him through the crowd. He had on his same neutral, almost unhappy looking face, his gray mustache covering most of his lips. And yes, it seemed like he was looking at me again. He wasn't even moving. I turned back to face forward and didn't see anything. If it happened again, I'd know something was up. And it did. At the Quincy Market, when we were about to meet with the rest of the group, I saw that man again, far away by a street corner, facing me. He almost blended in with the crowd if it weren't for his top hat. I ran up to Sean and Matt and pressed their shoulders to get them to turn around and look. I pointed at the corner that the man was at not even 10 seconds earlier, and he was gone. I told them that that creepy old dude that I mentioned from the burial ground seemed to be following us and kept looking at us, or at me specifically. I have zero clue where he could have went that quickly though. It didn't make sense. That night at the hotel, I was having a nightmare in which I was in my bedroom back at home, and I was hiding under my bed.
Seeing that guy?
I could see
Yep.
feet coming closer to the bed until they stopped at the foot of the bed. And then the man in the top hat looked under the bed at me with his neutral blank expression on his face. I woke up only moments later to a loud thump in the hotel room. I had no idea what it was. I woke up Matt and Sean and the third guy who was in our hotel room, asking if any of them heard that. No one did but me. I still have no clue what that sound was. Years later, I was going through old photo albums with my grandparents around Christmas
Oh
time.
no, you saw him in the
I stopped
background.
on one page where there was a very familiar looking man in one of them. He was wearing a very similar, if not the exact same type of top hat as the man in Boston all those years ago. He also had the same gray mustache and neutral expression on his face. I asked my grandparents who it was, and they told me it was my grandma's father. Now, I'm not saying I saw my grandma's dead dad that day in Boston, but the resemblance was so uncanny that I'm almost positive my mind was playing tricks on me. That whole series of events still freaks me out to this day.
That was a terrible story. I gotta tell you, man, the content field right now is dry as hell. There is no content. There is nothing. Those videos were so bad. So bad. Dead Gramps Revenge? I don't know what. Dude, these stories are something else, I tell you what.
And the rooms are meant to fit as many people as possible so as to create for a cheaper alternative to hotels and Airbnbs. These rooms can be single or mixed gender, and they can have private or shared bathrooms. Hostels are a common go-to for solo travelers who aren't looking to spend a lot of money on a hotel, or for people who only really plan on using the place to sleep and not really hang out. The 3 stories you're about to hear
A computer and a car. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Sorry.
were recounted by solo travelers who stayed in hostels and had not so great experiences with the people they were sharing.
I
their
mean,
rooms
yeah,
with.
the movie series Hostel 1 and 2 really kind of ruined it for these things. I do have
I
to
was
say.
for a while talking to this French girl that I matched on some dating app after my breakup.
It's actually the first YouTube video I ever watched, Meg. I was in English class. It was either 8th grade or freshman year. I'm pretty sure it was freshman year, so it was 2008. And these girls were quoting it, and I was like, what the hell are you guys talking about? And there was a computer in the class, and they were like, they're like, go on YouTube before the teacher gets in here. It's called Shoes. And I looked it up. It was the first YouTube video I've ever watched, ever. I didn't know anything about YouTube back then. But that's when YouTube was more like it was like a news article worthy thing back then. Like nobody really used it. No, I don't think so, Mac.
We were texting for a while, then started calling and FaceTiming each other almost every night. We connected really well, but she came from a strict family who she still lived with.
My favorite character of his was actually the aunt, the like super butch aunt, and she had a fucking song that her parents thought was like the devil, where she said, "As we sit astride our two-way dildo." Oh god. We'll talk while we watch the video.
Breakup.
I don't want to leave my man Mr. Nightmare hanging. I need some nightmare fuel.
We were texting for a while, then started calling and FaceTiming each other almost every night. We connected really well, but she came from a strict family who she still lived with. So when the idea of me visiting her came up, she made it clear she wouldn't be able to host me. And when I asked if she wanted to share a hotel room together, she said not the first couple nights after we met, just because her parents would have a freak out. So since I was only 23 and my pockets weren't stuffed...
You can't not think what now? What do you mean? I like that about True Blood. True Blood, people looked more realistic, you know? Oh, take me away. Oh, okay. Yeah, True Blood people looked more realistic. Like the other waitresses at the restaurant looked fine. They didn't look like, you know, they had spent 4 hours in hair and makeup before they got on camera, like the people in Vampire Diaries do.
Stay at a hostel not far from...
I loved the southern location of True Blood. Isn't it, I forget the name of the town, but it's Louisiana. Yeah. I don't know. I forget what the exact name of the town is, but yeah.
Her in Paris.
It's my favorite HBO show intro ever. No question.
I downloaded a couple movies to watch on the 7-hour flight since I already knew I wouldn't be able to sleep. I never can on flights. And I was right. I tried sleeping but didn't even get close.
No, not the show.
So by the time I landed and then Ubered to the hostel, I was running on 0 hours of sleep within
I'll
the
rewatch
past
the show
24
sometime.
hours.
You got me interested in watching it again.
Due to the 6-hour time difference, it was also like 3 in the morning. So at least that meant I could just go crash in the bed in the hostel and I wouldn't be jet lagged the next day. I arrived to the hostel, which admittedly wasn't the nicest place ever. It was small. There was a certain odor to the lobby, and the front desk worker wasn't too enthusiastic about his job. But it was 3 a.m. after all, so I had to cut him some slack. I walked to the room I'd be staying in, and there were 6 beds, 5 of them empty, but one had a guy sitting on it. He was on his laptop, typing away at something. He looked up at me, then back down at his laptop. I said, "Hey," but he didn't respond back. He seemed invested in what he was doing, so I just laid down in one of the empty beds. But the light to the room was still on.
Fuck.
I asked him if it was okay that I shut off the light. Then he looked at me with a blank expression but didn't say anything. I repeated what I said, assuming he didn't hear me, and he nodded his head with this weird smile. So I got up and turned off the lights to the room.
I'm sorry.
I passed out pretty quickly due to my lack of sleep, but surprisingly, I woke up a couple hours later. The room was still dark, but I didn't know for sure what woke me up.
How do these people fall asleep in hotels so easily? Or in this case, a hostel? Like, what the fuck, man? I cannot fall asleep anywhere that's not my own damn home very easily.
I rolled over to my side and looked around the room. It was almost pitch black, but I could see that all the beds were empty. All of them. Where was the other guy that was there earlier? The 2 bunk beds next to me were empty, top and bottom, but I knew something had to have woken me up. I looked on my phone, and it was 5 in the morning. I needed sleep, so I said screw it. He probably left, and maybe a sound from out in the hall woke me up. I lay back down on my side and closed my eyes. The mild traffic noises from outside was all that I heard. Then the bed shook a bit, and I heard a little crack of the metal frame, accompanied with this freakish breathing sound. I looked up in horror, and on top of me, I saw a head peering over the edge of the top bunk, looking into the bottom bunk at me. I can see the same creepy smile on his face, and his medium to longish black hair was drooping down with gravity below the top of his head as he hung upside down. It was a horrifying sight that words really can't explain. I screamed and fell off the bed as I realized what I was looking at. He sat up in the top bunk and continued looking at me. I screamed, "What the F are you doing?" as I threw something at him. He started to laugh, this really strange, off-putting laugh. I immediately turned the light on and went through my stuff to make sure nothing was stolen, while watching him at the same time. I then heard a click of a phone camera and looked at him as he was holding his phone up to me, clearly having just taken a picture of me. He was still laughing while looking at me. Something was wrong with this man. I didn't know if he had some screws loose mentally, or if he was doing this with bad intentions. I zipped up my bag and went to the front desk and requested a different room immediately.
Hey, what's up?
One of the single
Gaming's
private
good.
rooms. After explaining why and trying to get a reduced rate, he wouldn't budge. But he said he'd check on the room with the guest that I was just in. I didn't call the police because I didn't know if any laws were broken, but I sure as hell left a review of the hostel. The rest of my trip there was good. I had a good time with the girl I was seeing, but every time I returned to the hostel, I was scared I'd run into that guy. I don't like how a picture of me is on that weirdo's phone. I'm not a physical guy, but I wish in that instance, I did get physical.
I don't know who Doc Red is. I just know gaming is good. I don't know who this is that you're talking about.
I'm a solo traveler. I've stayed in countless hostels as a means of saving money, while also meeting new interesting people. I've stayed in a total of about 20 hostels in my life, and 90% of the time I've had good experiences. My first truly awful experience, though, was at a place called Freedom Traveler Hostel. And before I begin, I want to note that my horrible experience wasn't the complete fault of the hostel itself. The Freedom Traveler Hostel is located in Rome. It was my first time ever visiting Rome. I was completely inexperienced to the landscape and relied heavily on Google Maps and locals. In fact, even finding the hostel itself proved challenging as there were no signs for the place outside. But once I found the place, I let myself in
Next
through the
Friday
big
we
brown doors.
have to play Friday the 13th. Oh, excuse me, half. Well, I still have the game. I never returned it, so.
Greeted by a nice woman working the front counter. I had already booked a stay in one of the 4-person rooms. I was led to the room I'd be staying in, which had 1 bunk bed and 2 single beds, totaling sleeping space for 4 people. The room had a green theme to it, but it wasn't the biggest room. The worker told me there weren't many people staying in the hostel.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. I forgot about that, Meg.
Which I didn't really have a problem with if it would mean I would have more privacy in the room. The woman had a smile on her face the entire time, and I appreciated her help. She showed me where I could store my luggage, which was actually just some shed in the back garden area.
Hey, I didn't try
I wasn't
anything.
impressed nor confident with it, so I decided I'd leave my luggage in the room, especially since I didn't bring anything too valuable. I was exhausted after a whole day of traveling, so after changing clothes and stowing my luggage under the bottom bunk bed, I laid down ready to take a quick power nap. Not long after, I heard a knock at the door, and 2 young men walked in. They had thick Italian accents, I could tell right away. They greeted me and started talking to me, even though I was mid-nap, but I'm polite and social, so I was friendly and chatted with them. They introduced themselves as Marco and Lucio, brothers. Marco had to be like 6'4", he was huge. Lucio was probably 5'11".
No, actually you didn't. You didn't, Dr. Red. I actually have not been streaming the past couple days. Yeah, somebody else said, but I'm not sure who. But yeah, we'll make it fun. Of course we will.
Pick either, and I could
We
see
gotta
the
all get in the Discord, though, so we can talk.
resemblance in their faces. They were very tan, but both had receding hairlines, even though I could tell they were in their early 20s. They weren't the friendliest looking guys, but at first they seemed okay enough.
Sorry to hear that.
After getting
Gaming's
acquainted
good.
in English with them, the 2 brothers started to talk amongst themselves in Italian. They didn't know that I understood though, because right away I understood them to be talking about me and laughing at me. I heard, I believe, Marco describing me as some silly white boy. I could have said something right there in Italian, but instead I wanted to keep the illusion that I didn't speak the language. The 2 brothers eventually got up from their beds and left the room, with Lucio smiling and waving at me as they left. I just realized they didn't have their luggage in the room, which led me to believe they left their luggage in the storage shed in the garden area. I went to the garden area for a bit just to mingle with some of the people sitting out there, and I met a few nice tourists who were also staying there for the weekend. Then off I went to explore the city, heading in the direction of city center. After many hours and 2 food stops later, I returned to the hostel expecting some people to be socializing in the lounge area or in the back garden, but there was no one. So I figured I'd just get some early shut-eye. It was 9 p.m. anyway. I don't remember when I fell asleep, but I remember waking up. The lights in the room were still off, but I heard whispering voices.
Oh, jeez, it's
Brothers
not
were
again.
back. I didn't move. I listened to what they were saying, still speaking in Italian.
Pork loin with
One of
peppers
them
and
whispered
onions. That
something
sounds
roughly
amazing.
translated to, "Just grab it," or "Are you gonna do it?" I didn't know what it meant, but I had a feeling they were talking about my luggage. I was waiting to hear the sound of my luggage being moved before I would let them know I was awake, but instead, I felt a sweet-smelling, cold and wet cloth being pressed up to my face.
Oh, they're gonna
reacted
knock
by
him out.
yelling and swatting it off my face. I turned to see one of the brothers standing over me. I screamed, "What are you doing?" The man over me, I couldn't tell which one it was, then got on the lower bed with me and tried to subdue me, but I kicked him off and screamed for help. The other brother pulled him away from me, and the two men took off out of the room. I quickly grabbed my bag and shoes and went to the front desk for help. The man who was working now said he saw the two guys leave, but there was no information on them even staying there. They were two random locals who were trying to rob visitors to the hostel. They tried to literally chloroform me. I didn't stay there after that, of course. I'm sure they've upped their security now, but when I stayed there, clearly anybody could have just walked right in. If I wasn't awake, I would have been chloroformed and robbed of my entire bag. After this, I started being more careful of the hostels I stay at.
Yeah, I am with you, Meg. I would fucking never stay in one of these. Just the idea of this is all wrong. This is all fucking wrong, dude. Trying to get a Friday the 13th team together against your will. That's not against my will. I would love to. What do you mean against my will? That game is right up our alley on this stream. Fine. Either way, yeah, I will talk to you guys later. Sorry for the very short stream tonight, but I'm going to go ahead and break those chains, and I will talk to you guys later.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to follow StampedeG on Twitch. Links are down below.